Hello, dear viewers. Welcome to Alatra TV Middle East. We are very happy to see you today again. And I would like to say that today we have very special guests. But before we start, I would like to address our viewers. Please don't hesitate to leave your comments and your questions in live chat on YouTube channel just below this video. And the most interesting questions addressed to our guests today will be asked in our live broadcast. And please don't forget to share your vision on the creative and constructive society and invite your friends by sharing this video in your social networks with two hashtags. First hashtag Alatra Unite and second hashtag Creative Society. And for those who are joining us today for the first time, I would like to say that Alatra International Public Movement has launched a unique global international project called Creative Society. Within this project, we ask people all over the globe how they envision creative and constructive society, such a society where everyone lives in happiness and prosperity, such a society where everyone feels safe. So, to fulfill our main goal, and our main goal is to ask all the humanity about their vision on the creative society, we decided to use the theory of six handshakes. And I pass a word to my wonderful co-host today, Kate from Paris. Hi, Kate, how are you?
Hello, Alina. I'm really happy to be with you. And yes, I will briefly introduce the theory of six handshakes that we continue to explore with the participant of the International Public Movement, Alatra Movement. So according to this theory, all the people on Earth know each other through six or even less social connections. So thanks to the modern technology, let's say someone from Belgrade will know someone in Paris, just as an example. And I would like to introduce our dear guests. So please welcome two great women, my friends, and I would like to introduce Anna Bovan from Belgrade, Republic of Serbia. Hello, Anna.
Hello.
And Laurence Lécuyer from Paris in France, but now Laurence, she's in Pakistan.
Hello.
And I will just tell a little bit more about Anna. Anna is a serial entrepreneur, business consultant and coach, and president of CEDEF, Central European Development Forum, professor, dean of Faculty of Management, former at Metropolitan University, and professor as well at Weller International Business School in Paris. And Laurence, she's an ethnologist, anthropologist, professor at INALCO. That means National Institute of Oriental Languages and Civilization. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about yourself, what inspires you and what drives you and your professional activities, and what motivated you to become and to work in this field of education. So please, maybe someone will start.
Laurence?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks for inviting us, I guess, to this wonderful project. Surely everybody would like to live in a society. Everybody's both creative and safe and living on a safe planet, among other things. And thank you very much, Katerina. We go back a long way, many, many years. And so when you say, six handshakes, definitely we are number one. And then, of course, others will follow after this as well. I guess inspiration always comes from, your kind of your internal drive. But when you see things happening and when you achieve even a little step, especially in something that is a social endeavor, and you see a bit of a better and a bigger good than just an individual achievement of, you've done something, you've achieved something, you've bought something, you've made something, but something that is a little bit bigger. I think that is also education, and that always motivated me to find knowledge, enjoy knowledge, and share knowledge. And through education and being an educator, you also learn all the time. Communication with your students, with your staff and faculty, but also through many further readings you just need and are pulled to go through to somehow make it fuller, because the more you know, you are aware, the less you know. So in that sense, I think sharing knowledge and feeling so small and realizing you're growing with knowledge and sharing that is one of the biggest inspirations for me.
Thanks
and
a
it's
lot.
exactly the same for me. Actually, the process of teaching requires that you always go back to the place of a student, because whatever you've learned, it's like in process and it's like a circular shape. So we go through a process of learning and teaching, and then we realize that we are growing, and when we are growing, then we become again student, and again we put everything flat which we learned before to get more notions, and actually the knowledge grows with us and we grow along with our students. This is why I always tell my students that we are co-working together. I'm not the one transmitting knowledge on the horizontal plane and you're receiving. We are actually co-building this knowledge, and while building it, we are moving, we are growing. So actually the process which I love the most, which you always also stated, is the process of growing. We are growing ourselves and we are growing with our students, and we allow this growth in the students. This is why the act of teaching, of being in education, for me, it's one of the noble tasks, the most noble tasks on this planet, for those souls who have been designed for this mission, because we also need this kind of inspiration, right? We have to be in the right place, because the teaching process requires also some specific qualities of the soul which are not to be learned. And so, like everything requires these qualities. So we have to acknowledge and recognize that we are in the right place. And personally, in my, I did not intend to be professor or teacher when I was 20. I wanted to be a doctor, but I failed at maths. But actually, the education kept running after me, chasing me like, come here. So I surrendered. But they're actually the same as what you've been saying also.
That's very much inspiring, and I love that you said that means that a teacher is always a student, and a student is also a professor teaching, giving something to a professor and to a teacher. And what I heard, it's also, I love that this process of inspiration, mutual collaboration, and which gives the development and the growth to both personalities of teachers and students at the same time. And it's a never-ending process, as far as I see from what you said just now. That's very much inspiring. This is why I would like to ask you the first question. Many people, you collaborated and cooperated with many students, you travel a lot, and the actual situation with the educational system in our world, in different countries. But how do you envision educational system of a creative society if we consider our society as a whole, as one?
You want to start?
Okay. In a creative society, if that means that there is a little more freedom for everybody to be creative, so there is an institutional framework that allows that and stimulates that and also regulates and protects that. Because, of course, with freedom and creativity, we also have more responsibility and towards our community. So in that kind of a society, I think that we would definitely need to move away from the industrial age education, the type of one way that you, Laurence, mentioned as well, one way ex cathedra teaching, where the teacher is a star. So it's not the students and it's not the collaboration which is a star, but the teacher. So there is still a lot of that throughout the education, from the very young age to the academia. The only type of education that I see now that is kind of moving away from that paradigm is, in fact, business education, where there is a much higher expectation to receive not only knowledge, but to really discuss, live the cases, solve the real problems, which is something I think we should also start doing much earlier, starting with kindergarten and primary school and high school education, and of course, academia. So there is a lot more collaboration. Private universities in my region of the world, so speaking from Belgrade, and my university that I work at is a private one, which has been around for 15 years, and we celebrate students. And so the professors are not the center of the world, which is something that I experienced as a young student of law many years ago, and is still very much the case. So creative society, I think, definitely requires the education to be freed up for more collaboration, for more implementation, for more practical work, for looking at the world around yourself, and not even thinking in silos. This is physics. This is chemistry. This is languages. But maybe through something that some novel educational methods are going through, and that is discussing, for example, a huge topic in primary school, maybe the American Civil War. So you look at it from different, not so much siloed fields of study, and look at it as a phenomena in its real-time context. So this is some of my thinking about that.
Yes, I find very interesting everything you said, and I completely agree with everything you said. And I found it very, very interesting what you said about the framework and the structure to be able to hold the process and to encompass the process and to accompany the process and to protect the process. And I think there are two elements that we have to go back to, which are very important and which complement what you've been saying, but also I see it in what you say, is the intention and going back to natural processes. Because even in I've done research in sciences of education and pedagogical methods and all these things. And sometimes when we go to it with the mind, through the mind, it can become even more confusing and complicated, inventing again more and more, putting more and more layers on top of one another, complicating our minds on how we can do, which method we can invent. But actually, I feel personally, and this is how I teach since a long time, that everything is already in us. And I always tell my students, I have 20 years old students for the average, but I have 60 years old students, retired students, people who have written books, all kinds of life. I also talk to my daughter at home. I talk to small children. Everything is in the human being, in the spiritual, emotional, intellectual DNA of the human being is the process of learning. And what is the oil? What is the fuel of the process of learning? Curiosity. So when we look at any human being on the surface of this planet, be them in Africa, in India, Pakistan, France, wherever, Belgrade, when you look at a little child, whatever he needs for his development and survival, walking, knowing how to drive a bicycle, eating, whatever the child needs, he learns it. And he doesn't learn it through books or through methods or through complicated processes to be able to remember. He learns incredibly fast. If you look at the children playing, I've been observing children play in Africa, in India. So they invent so many they are creative. Human beings' nature is to be creative. So actually, in the as you said, industrial educational system, what we have done is school system as a whole is killing that creativity, which is the very essence of the learning. So we come into a contradiction. We kill the natural gem which is inside the human beings for the process of learning, and then we try to substitute it with artificial implementations of complicated methods to replace what was here in the start, which has been killed. And it was being killed because, exactly like you say, there is not much respect for the students. They cannot express themselves. But we know as teachers, and the students know also, that when we learn new things, when we voice them out, when we say them to someone, when we explain them to someone, then it becomes manifest. It becomes embedded in us. Then we incorporate the new learning. So the students, we shut them up. They are seated on a chair full day and they don't have to talk. They can even ask questions. How can the process of learning be implemented in such a context which is completely contrary to a context of learning? So I think in a creative society, as you say, because if we have to observe life, what is life? Well, everything has been created absolutely perfect. So when we look at the process of learning in life and kind of copy or go back to this, then we'll find that we don't have to do much. And I've learned in schools which are implementing these kinds of teachings, natural teachings, like in France, the Freinet movement, Montessori movement. So actually the teachers, they are tutors for the students, and students co-tutor each one another. So this is really important, I think, to come back, just the same as in eating, in spirituality, in dressing, in all the social actions, because I'm an anthropologist, so this is what I study also, to go back to what is already here and get off of the layers that have solidified, ossified upon the structure of the human being and actually suffocating him with unnecessary things, and come back to the creative light, which is the main component of human mind in the first place, human soul, human heart. And secondly, the intention is also very important. And again, it was in what you said, that for which intention go to the children go to school, for what? And in today's industrial society, people in school, it is not, of course, consciously implemented by the teachers, but it is a whole system with its own logic and intelligence. School is to produce citizens, and these citizens are going to produce in such societies that mainly they will become producers and consumers. And when we are only in this paradigm, where is humanity? Humanity is more than producing and consuming. So I think the whole intention of why we go to school and for which reason, to construct what kind of individual and what kind of future, then naturally, if we transform the roots, then the whole system by itself will be changed.
Thank you very much. I have a question as well related with that. As we see today, there is so much negativity, violence, and aggression as well in mass media that is promoted. And in the context of the education field that starts from our school age, in your opinion, what could be done to reduce the level of this violence, negativity in family, in the society in general, and in the context of the education, for example?
Would you like to start now?
If you want.
The mistake not to reproduce in the creative society, I would say.
Again, to change the roots. Where violence comes from, where aggression comes from frustration, from contradicting the very natural inclination of human being for light, for love, for compassion. So if we give to a garden the natural elements which it needs, the sunlight, the water, we don't need to put chemicals in that land because it already has everything. And again, the potential nature of human is to be happy, to be peaceful, to be compassionate with one another. When human become other than that and the opposite of that, it means that in the roots, the wrong things have been put in the land. So to be able to change that again, I'm really an advocate of changing the root rather than putting, plaster upon plaster to try to, like hide the reason, to attack the symptoms by the roots rather than to shut down the symptoms. So what is violence? Violence is the expression of something which is wrong. It is the cry of the heart of someone who is in deep pain, who has been trying to say something for such a long time in all kinds of languages and crying, shouting, and has not been heard. And ultimately, what happens? Violence. It happens in classes. I've been teaching in high schools and secondary schools also, and I never punish my students, because when they have a space classroom where they can express, there are of course many kinds of issues can appear in a classroom, it comprising when we talk and we can disturb the students, because in my discipline we really open the categories, we reflect on everything that was given before, we open everything and look what's in the box. So if we give the opportunity to students to voice out what they think, who they are, to get the opportunity to be confident in themselves, then they don't need violence. And as a whole in a society, violence is when a human being has been so much contradicting his own nature that the only way to voice out the suffering and the frustration is through violence. because all other ways have been closed.
I absolutely agree with you. This is clearly, the ecosystem of thinking must work together. And what we mentioned about education spills over in a way into violence and in this educational context. I think that the modern society with its alienation, triumphing the individualism, has moved quite a lot from the communal spirit and the family and the closer environment around the family, the neighborhood, the social activities in a smaller environment. And all the psychologists tell us for many, many decades, and even more than that, that happiness and a sense of fulfillment is actually achieved through communication with others. So it's very important not to be alone or feel alone. In that sense, when we kind of transform this into the educational context, the social function, the educational function, and the kind of upbringing function of schools, I think should be put closer to work with the family. So the environment around the family, the community, the not only the triumph of individualism and just one person, which you can always have and spur and promote, especially in a creative society. You can and you should, which we mentioned at the beginning, but also working closer with the social function of a school, which means much closer ties, much more working together, making those communities joint, talking, and having clearly a system in which a pedagogy expert in a school, a teacher, is not the last person with a salary, with a social status. They're very important for a society. I do understand that in many countries, as it's a kind of a current debate, policemen are very well dressed and very well equipped, and like some people out of this world and ready to go to space. But at the same time, maybe medical workers, but also teachers and kindergarten carers and geriatric carers should also, okay, we're not talking about geriatric, but I'm just putting the whole social kind of elements into this, and educational should also be provided by the system. So you can't have a teacher or a kindergarten carer going to work absolutely unhappy, without any social safety net, apart from having maybe a secure job. Well, that's also a maybe. And then being in a situation to be very creative, very motivated, to work with parents, to work with the society, to educate themselves, and to bring about from the kids all of the goodies that you can, including helping with violence, with stories from home, with stories inside the kindergarten, inside the school. So I think this closely knits a community working together with social workers and educational workers to be much more respected by the system, which means less corrupt system, with right values in the society and right institutions that actually work and function, is really a big fundamental a fundamental pillar we need to build on. So it's not a short step to get there, it's quite a fundamental one.
If I can just I completely agree, completely 100% agree with what you just said, and which is very important in your questions about creative society, is to rethink the system altogether as a fabric, as a knitted fabric, and how it is woven together. And on a fabric, when you pull one string on one side, of course it's going to affect the whole fabric. And we have too much been fragmented and dissoluted, I don't know how to say, dissolved in this fragmentation inside of the self, outside of the society, because what is outside is inside, what is inside is outside. So what is the society today is the reflection and what individualism has done to the individual. It has fragmented the individual. So we have to repair this fragmentation, exactly like you said, by knitting again everything together and seeing the link and gluing that together and letting the spirit of love traversing the whole system and considering the whole system as a whole. and then it will happen in every health-wise, in the health system, as you talked about geriatric. Everything is connected and linked. So of what you said, really, it's really interesting that the main point of creative society is the link, is the whole, is holistic thinking and living. Yes.
And thank you so much. I would like just to add that this request for change, for a creative society and bringing the creative attitude to the education, it comes nowadays from all like the levels and participants of this educational system, because I'm a mom of two and I have a daughter. She's 9 years old. Just recently, she came to me and she said, Mom, I have a question. I realized that I have to learn for 22 years in order to get a job to pay my bread. And why is it so? And then here I came to the point, how are you going to explain a 9-year-old kid this situation which exists nowadays in the world? And since she was 3 years old, she always was in very good schools, like in Montessori school, in best private schools. And basically, she saw very good level of education available in our world, let's say, in comparison with other countries. But still, very small kid, she really understands what's going on in this system. And I explained her that basically here we just should change our attitude. You can see it from the perspectives that you are not learning for 22 years in order to earn your bread, but you are learning for 22 years to make this world better, to develop yourself, to become a better person. And this is that creativity which we all miss really. And I met a lot of educational professionals who really want and they're eager to be creative in their profession, and they see and they understand this need for the creative society and this unity between people in this particular sphere between teachers and students. But they are under the huge pressure of the educational system which is existing today. And they want to do a lot, but sometimes they just don't have those tools to act. And this is why I would like just to say that my personal experience already brought me to the idea that at any level of our society, if we touch, for example, as today the topic is educational system, everyone within this system, teachers, professionals, administration, ministries, all people need this huge change. Creative society is something that is really necessary nowadays, and we all understand that this is the way out. And even small kids, they ask for it.
Yes.
And also, just to go further, I would like to ask you, how do you envision which personal qualities and characteristics should have a professional teacher in a creative society?
You?
Yeah, okay. Definitely compassion, empathy, sensitivity, a sense of affection and love for what you're doing and the students. When I always ask my students, did they like the class? What did they remember in the last class? Why did they remember what they remembered? Why did they not remember? I start nearly every class like this. And the main answers I get from most students is, why do they remember when they remember? Because the teacher was passionate, or because they have a specific relationship with the teacher. They like their teacher. The teacher is nice to them because they can relate to what the teacher is saying in their heart. They have lived this situation. So all these is qualities of in the students and the teachers, actually, of being capable of empathy, compassion, and humility. And this is also, I think, something that unlocks the learning powers of the students, is being able to relate to the professor, especially in universities, because professors, they have PhDs and they are researchers and everything. To unlock this facilities by unlocking, developing the self-confidence. And too many times, and especially in France, I don't know how it is in Belgrade, but in France, a lot of professors are abusing of their knowledge and power, and they are identifying with their knowledge, that I have accumulated so much knowledge that I am this knowledge. And unconsciously or consciously, what they do is that they make the students feel, so much inferior, that we don't know anything. And a lot of students, they are afraid to to speak in the class because they're afraid to give the wrong answer. So in my practice and experience, what I see and how classes become very interesting with the participation of students is when, after a few weeks of the semester has started, and the students start to gain confidence. Because I always tell my students, I also teach a very nice topic, anthropology, social anthropology. Means we are thinking, reflecting about the world, and rethinking the whole categories with which we used to think every day, and watching what is inside the box actually. Is it really what we intend, what we're saying? So when I start class, I always ask the students, okay, we're going to speak about this. So what do you know about? What do you think about? And then I write everything on the board. And even if I have 20 students, 50 students, I always tell them, this is exactly what I had prepared for class. Means each and every single one of you, you have a part of the answer. So giving this sense of confidence to the students is very important for the co-construction of this knowledge. And because of this, because they start to gain confidence and think, maybe I know some things, I have noticed that after this confidence is gained, the students remember very well the class. They are not absent anymore in class. They come very happily in the class. Actually, even other students who are not supposed to follow the class, they also come because they take pleasure. So pleasure is also a very important element. So I would add to the qualities the ability in the teacher, this chemistry of being capable to produce happiness in the students. And like I was saying in the other time, many times I heard, you're not here to make students happy. And I say, yes, I am. I'm here to make the students happy in the first place. Because without love and without happiness, we cannot learn anything. So this is a very important quality. And once they gain this confidence, then they can also develop their own potential and actually what they will become. And this is a huge responsibility also from the professor. It's what kind of a human being and citizen will become that young person will depend in part on how well do they know themselves, how well do they know what competence they have. Okay, I'm a good anthropologist, I'm at the right place, but I would be a horrible dentist, a terrible engineer. And some student, he will be a very great engineer and he knows more than me in that domain. But if you don't know yourself, how are you going to know in which place you will be the most efficient in a creative society, in which you'll be most creative? So also by unlocking these self-confidence and trusting one another, the students between them with the teacher, we unlock a game of mirrors. Everyone becomes the mirror of the other and allowing them to become more themselves. So I think that's one of the qualities. And like I was talking about the quality of being able to open the hearts. And actually, this is my too much assimilation into the Indian system. I start nearly all my classes with music. And I've noticed that when you start with music, the students come, they sit, they bring so many loads on their backs of previous classes, maybe family problems, whatever. And they sit and they completely relax. And you see, I look at their faces while they watch the music, they completely absorb and their hearts open, the eyes start to glitter. And then, yes, you can plant the seeds of knowledge. So, yes.
That sounds wonderful. I absolutely agree with you. Although I think that starting my class in Paris on international export with music would be quite interesting. My class lobbying the government, lobbying by NGOs and other organizations. I'm just joking. Actually, I did play a few times Tosca just to kind of unlock some of the love that's very hard to find with young students in opera, especially Tosca. You know how exciting it is. It's just busy story that they might relate to. I absolutely agree with you. Empathy and love, and so an educator should be a good psychologist and should be a coach. for a team and understand both teams and understand both individuals. So and a psychologist and a kind of a team psychologist. So to help them and motivate them and help them grow and understand each other. So I definitely vet everything you say. I think it's very well put. I basically have nothing else to add, just this kind of mentorship and coaching talent. And the way you describe the educators, I mean, they're some kind of supermen, superwomen, and it's really difficult. So they need to have this drive to better themselves, to invest into themselves in order to share that even more and to help their students grow. And in that sense, they also need to be creative. And when you come with music to your anthropology, social anthropology class, which is, I'm sure absolutely amazing and wonderful, and it unlocks the emotion, which is what you need, and something that works from here, not only rational and the smart brain, the new brain, but also other emotional triggers. I think that really needs for you to be creative and to know which channel to use to reach the students and whatever you want to reach, their intellect, their emotions, whichever other shell you'd like to penetrate and share that knowledge and, as I said, help them grow. So I think to be a real complex educator, you really need to work a lot on yourself.
Yeah, well, I would add also, because you said about the channel and music, I often say to my students that when you're, like exactly you said, you're playing on many different channels. So we have to be a musician because we have to play a symphony ourselves alone. We have to play the B note for this student, the E note for that student, so that at the same time, in one moment, all these notes will be encompassed in what we're saying, so that we are able to touch everything and every single heart. But for this also, like you talk about being a psychologist, we need to be connected to every student on an individual level and to their heart and sensitivity to know which note to play on to reach to them. So we have to be musicians.
Absolutely, and we have to be honest. Whenever we collaborate with people, and especially with young souls, what I saw in my experience, then a professor, a teacher is honest. They feel it immediately, and they open up as well. And I also I liked everything what you said, and also that you touched that question of responsibility to develop for a professor, for a teacher, like that you take a responsibility to grow really, and not in your ego, as in the example which you, Laurence, brought up earlier, but really in your personality, like your personal spiritual development. And that's very much inspiring. Thank you.
I propose to make it as well more interactive with our viewers because we have one question for you. So I will read it. It's actually a dream of every student to be in such circumstances where one can open his potential and be in the cooperation with teachers. So how do you see the role of youth in this creative society? So Laurence, Anna, maybe you can answer to this question for our viewers.
Go ahead, Anna. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The youth do bring the unexpected, the new, the challenging, the daring, the crazy in a positive way. And if we have the right fertile ground, which we've created through right institutions, the protection, the regulation, the safety, then clearly the such a system would definitely open up all of its pores for the contribution of the youth, as well as the very elderly, who also have a lot to say. And in some dream world that I sometimes imagine, like some Traumwelt, I see the elderly working very closely with the very young, because that seems to me a really logical connection. But rarely you find any system where the very young with extremely busy parents. And I know I have two sons, and now also a granddaughter. And it's been a crazy, time, the 20 years of just absolute chaos. And then, they grow up and go. And, but with the elderly and the really young, to create some kind of a possibility to working together, growing together in a safe environment, and especially the youth, anybody from, I don't know, their early teens to their mid-20s have so much to contribute to the society through schools, through their high schools, or if they go to university, definitely through universities. But unless they're in some kind of clubs, organizations that have a really wide reach, their voice is not heard. You can have so many Gretas in the world, and clearly when we have one, it's like a wow thing. She definitely says all the right things, and this touches my interest in climate action. So I like to listen to her, and most of the time I absolutely agree. And but this is a rare occurrence, and that's why I think it's such a phenomenon. Young people, clearly with their very diffused concentration and very many interests and growing up, and if there isn't a real safe environment for them especially through already institutionalized organizations and institutions like schools, like youth clubs, it's difficult to find their voice. So I think that maybe before we come up with some very new formations for them to speak their voice, maybe we should simply strengthen and widen the already existing institutions, which aren't all that bad, like schools and universities, and maybe community areas for them to actually express themselves. I'm sure there's sports clubs and fans of sports clubs is also somewhere where they go to give a voice and get the sense of huge big belonging and feeling warm and rooting for the same club, sometimes going too far, but channeling that in more creative way in some creative society, that would really be the right way to use all that energy, all those ideas, all those amazing questions that come from youth, which is something that we should just capture, because you're only once 17 or 21, and that's it. And then you learn the old ways, and maybe you become not so creative and not so open, and you are taught to get in line and go for your school, for your job, for your mortgage, get nailed for 20 years, and just do the right things in order to have a working, functioning society. If that society is really the pinnacle of what humankind can do, is another question. Yes, we do want an orderly society, clearly, but if this particular society, which is fixed on growth with consumerism, which you also, Lawrence, mentioned, are we educating human beings or consumers? But also consumers need to learn, and our young people need to learn as well, that consumerism fuels endless growth, which is not a sustainable a way forward. So maybe we can also get some more ideas from the young, but in a kind of a more organized way. And we need to think how to harness all those creative possibilities from them. And I think it's very necessary. And thank you for the question for the person who posed it.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. And actually, I don't have much to add to, because I think you said everything. And you repeat a word which in my sense is very important in the word of education, is channeling. And what I've seen in other societies, such as India, for example, where I was very amazed, actually, I worked a little bit in anthropology on teenage crisis. And in traditional India, there is no such thing as teenage crisis. It's not a crisis, it's a moment of huge transformation. But what I've seen, for example, in South India, is that the teenagers from, let's say, 15 until young adult age are being channeled exactly into the forces that they have, which you have voiced already. You have said that, the young people, they have such qualities, and they are not being exploited. Actually, as professors, I use the forces of my students to teach my classes. Otherwise, without them, I can't. If I'm in front of other people, I can't. If I'm in front of people who are not receptive, why I can teach my class the way I teach? Because they are creative, because they have this huge strength, force of life inside of them, which needs to be like a fountain, and they are being contained. And in these industrial societies, there is no room for the forces of youth and teenagehood. And these forces are precisely the creative forces that have been put in human beings, but they are being channeled, they are being pushed back. And this is where the violence comes from this frustration, because this is something that they cannot control. And if it is not channeled the right direction in creative way, then it becomes destructive. And this is why also the youth have so many behaviors of self-destruction or destruction of others, because these forces, at the moment when they utter in life, this is the only time in life when these forces are being out of the human being, like a volcano. When we become old, then we learn to rechannel them inside. That's the moment of expansion. So if they are being used correctly by the society, then they can bring such a huge change. And I've seen in India, like the teenagers, they can play like babies, they can play with the small children, they can play all kinds of games. But when comes like some kinds of religious festivities, for example, in the Hindus, they will be given huge responsibilities. I've seen that in South India, for example, the drumming, which is really the root of the ceremony. If the drumming goes wrong, then the spirit cannot appear, the ceremony cannot be completed, the ritual is completely upside down. This responsibility, under the supervision of an adult, is given to teenagers, to young men or women, because they have this strength. And because they are channeled, they are very happy to run through, to flow through this time of youth, because they are being utilized, and they understand that they have this force in them, and they are being channeled, spiritually channeled also. I think we cannot speak about all this and creative society without talking about spirituality, because what is creative in the human being is the spirit, is his spirit. So definitely in exploiting these forces and allowing them to express themselves. And like I said in the other meeting we had last time about education, in my institution, some students created a language. Why they created a language? Because they were with a professor, also amazing professor, who allowed them to be themselves and who told them, okay, you do something. And they did something, they created a language. And then they came into a meeting in the amphitheater of our university, and they challenged the professors that, okay, we gave you our language, our grammar, our syntax, now you do something with it, and we couldn't do anything. So they have everything, and we as educators, we should have the responsibility to only channel what they already have in them, and also seeing that in them will awaken these forces which are dormant in us as elder adults. So really, thank you for the question.
Thank you. From what you said now, I have a feeling nowadays in our consumer society, we are all need to be challenged a little bit to our creative and spiritual way. And what I really liked, also everything is awesome. And then Anna said that our civilization, our humanity has a enormous potential, good potential, good experience, and we can just collect it, and we have multiplied and apply it globally all over the world. We don't need to start from zero. We have everything. We just should now choose between what we don't need and what can make us better, what can challenge us to there and to send us to the right direction. And that's really awesome. And we believe that creative society is that unique goal which can unite all of us and really bring us to their to the point that we are all looking forward to. And the basis of our goal are those 8 foundations which were described for the first time in the article, The Foundations of the Creative Society and the Stages of its Construction. This article was published on the 18th of May 2020 on the website allatraunites.com, and we all had a chance to read this article. So, dear viewers, dear guests, we would like to welcome you to read this article and also to get your feedback, to get your understandings about those ideas which were described in the article. And maybe today we would like to make a short presentation of these foundations for our viewers and to ask you a couple of questions about how do you, our dear guests, understand those foundations, please.
Laurence?
How do I understand these foundations?
Yeah, we will now introduce them, right, Kate? We can read the first,
Yes.
maybe.
So the Creative Society stands on 8 pillars, and let's start with the first one. So what does it mean precisely? Human life is the highest value. So life of any human has to be protected as one's own. And for me, it's really important one. So maybe you can share your understanding on this topic and how important is this one for each person, for you, in the education and in general?
Well, actually, I think human as a whole, in general, and students, young people, we can only take the right place which has been attributed to us in the world, in life, in this society, when we do understand a little bit, we have an understanding, maybe spiritual understanding of why this world is here, what we're doing in this world. Because I've seen also in young people, a lot of them, they have this kind of feeling that what I'm doing here, sometimes I'm out of place. I don't know exactly what I'm doing here. It doesn't seem very logical, this world. There's a lot of violence, what I'm going to do. So understanding of the value of human life, why such a species as humans, which can be capable of the worth and capable of the better, also with an equal portion of materialistic matter and spirit, light, why we have been given this opportunity. So in the West, people believe we live just once. In the East, many people believe we come back to this creation many times. But what is the goal of life? And there is something very sacred about life. So if we use education to show, to teach, as Gandhi used to say and teach and make a lot of experiments on that, to the students, what is the purpose of their existence? And what has been put in them in the form of specific qualities to serve that purpose, to fulfill this mission in life. Maybe the role, and maybe the unique role of education, if we speak a little bit about spirituality also, is to shed the light in a mirror effect in every single student, every single person who is in front of us, to show them by the light of our teaching and the light produced in being together in this congregation, what has been put in them, what can they do with that, why it has been put in them, and how it is related to what they are supposed to be doing in this life, not to waste it. We only have one, maybe, and to be able to make the best out of it. So the understanding of life, and also coming back to what Anna, you've been talking about the system and how everything correlates. So everything is alive, everything is living, the trees, the birds, the plants. So how we are related to all these forms of life. And it's true that education as a whole is mostly in non-living buildings and classrooms, but I've taught under trees, in forests, in parks, and the teaching becomes much more vibrant when we do so. So reconnected with the very essence of life is very important, and maybe this is our role as educators, to reconnect, if they are not already, the students, with their consciousness of being connected to life, because they are connected to life, because they are alive, we are alive. But a lot of people don't know, and it's the same for adults also. I think we could take the same example for geriatric institutions, where the old people, they have so much, because capitalistic or consumerism society, all people are not productive, so they are nothing. So they are losing the sense of their own values, and they just die of sadness, and they die before they die, because this fire of life is just extinguished in them. So to bring back the consciousness of what it means to be alive.
We're both going to comment on each of the pillars, or are you going even numbers and odd numbers? What's the?
You can choose another one if you want. It was just like a proposition, but
okay.
I can read a second one. I can read the second pillar for you and for our viewers. And so the second pillar is human freedom. Every human is born with the right to be human being. All people are born free and equal. Everyone has the right to choose. There can be no and no one, nothing on earth above a human, his freedom and rights. The implementation of human rights and freedoms must not violate the rights and freedoms of others. What are your insights about this pillar, Anne?
Well, clearly, as in the charts of for human rights, European and global, these are clearly some of the basic pillars of any society, especially something that we would like to term and create called creative society. The vision of freedom, the understanding of personal and other types of freedom are really very different. I mean, I lived in Australia, and then when we play downtown in Bondi Junction Double Way with the kids, there is one sense of freedom. Then when we go outside and it's we're talking to the Aborigines, it's another one. The same thing when I don't know many years ago when I was visiting Iraq. You go into a Bedouin a tent, and it's one sense of freedom, and you go back to I don't know somewhere in Baku, in Azerbaijan, is recently it's completely another. So it's a really very different idea of what is physical integrity and mental and spiritual and creative freedom that you have, and where are the boundaries. It's very much social related, clearly, and culturally related. To make something that is universal, I guess it's been a dream of many poets and artists and philosophers and statesmen. And some of them have managed to maybe move the goalpost a little bit further, but in a positive way, of course, and to create something more universal for the society. But it's very interesting. I think in the last 10 years, with the proliferation of social media, things have gotten a little bit bugged. I think that a lot of people who were happy to have a global voice can have a global voice, and who want change. That's why they need the global voice, or even local voice, but to change something. And it seems to satisfy them just to tweet or to release one individual sound out of 7 billion, and that's the pressure's released, and I'm kind of done. I've done my bit, and that does not, the cacophony of noises, disagreements on everything, including what is universal understanding of freedom and rights, and what I'm allowed to do and you're not allowed to do, and the other way around, and what is even on the political stage daily, when you look at what's happening in countries like Serbia, Hungary, the UK, US, many others. I don't follow each of them very very closely, but some I do, and the understanding of who is allowed or privileged to do something and the others are not is really shifting and changing. So I kind of I just like to make this small comment. It's just an insular idea in this huge topic of human rights and freedom. And that is that if you want to fight for that and you do it through social media, it's kind of losing its real potency and the paradox of social media and the might which it could have, but it's not reaching its potential in order to, as I mentioned, fight for some more freedom and more sense of being equal to others, because the limit of my freedom is clearly your freedom, and the global understanding of that is just so far away. Sometimes I think we are regressing, and sometimes we are maybe making some steps. It's still a big task ahead of us. And at the same time, Laurence, what you mentioned, our life, which is the pretext of our freedom, is also the freedom of animals as well, and the biological life, and life of the planet. Although we all know that it's us who need to be kind to the planet, it will remain. It's us who need to take care of what we do. And with the biological life, we can only harm ourselves. And if you talk about the right to have a life, the right to have health, the right to have freedom to do things, and just recently in the pandemic, is it my right not to wear a mask if I don't want to? Is it my right to go and have a haircut earlier than maybe I should? So some of these extreme situations once in a century, like a pandemic, also remind us of what is actually my freedom. Wearing a mask, is it my freedom, or is it my social obligation to save others? And so I think that it's quite a time to ponder about this, the individual freedom and the freedom in a society.
It's really time to work globally, to unite and to discuss all together how do we envision this human freedom, because there are very crucial and essential understandings in this pillar for me. And from the other point of view, we see a lot of examples in our life how people change the essential sense of this meaning and come to the point of wars and conflicts and taking life from the others just to get freedom, which is not really a true freedom of a human being. So if we all unite and we come to the point that we finally need to understand what it is and to accept it and to respect it, that I see that our society can really become a different one, and we come to the top of the pyramid. There we will finally have a happy society. And thank you so much, ladies. Thank you for your understandings. Maybe
I would like to remind, I'm a timekeeper today, so Laurence, Alina, Anna, I have a proposition for you. I would like to discuss some more in details. Just a second. Can you hear me? Yeah, yes, can you hear me? Yeah. So I would like to discuss maybe and to go more into the details and discuss about these 8 pillars, and we could organize another live on this topic. And as well, I wanted to ask you, how do you think, can you share maybe with your students or maybe with your colleagues these 8 pillars, and to start to discuss, and maybe next time we will share our experience and we will talk about this and we will make it more interactive. How do you think?
Oh yes, absolutely. It's a representative of our future creative society come up with creative ideas. So Katarina, thank you.
So maybe as well we could invite another person with us to discuss these 8 pillars. So it would be really interesting. Personally, for me, I would like to discuss hours and hours with you, but unfortunately, time flies. So maybe to finish this live, you can say some messages, or maybe something for our viewers.
Wow, that's a broad platform. But
yes,
in the context of the creative society, I think that every individual should just hold the hands of everybody around them, starting with the immediate circle, and help each other to find that creative being And by being together, that also kind of takes, in a way, care of caring about others, because being creative as a person, as an individual, and caring about others, I think that's what a good world looks like. So more of these concentric circles and more of the 6 steps and 6 handshakes that you mentioned should connect us. So let's all work on that in continue. And thank you very much for this live.
And I have nothing to add because I perfectly agree. And I think this is really the word of the end. And thank you so much. I was really glad to meet you, Anna. It was really a pleasure because as when we're teaching with students, the heart of the person with whom we interact is also very inspiring. So thank you for inspiring me. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. That was a great opportunity to provide a platform of the volunteer international public movement ALLATRA to the specialists who can unite and find solutions to the situation, discuss important topics. And that's why it was created, actually. And also, I would like to address to our viewers who would like to join the project Creative Society. It's very easy. You simply go to the webpage ALLATRAunites.com. You see the red button join us, you click it, and actually you choose a language you speak, you answer a question how you would like to join, and you leave your contacts for the volunteers of ALLATRA International Public Movement to get in touch with you, and together you can discuss the way you would like to participate in this global and very much important topic today. So thank you so much for being with us today in this live conversation. Dear viewers, if you would like to participate in our broadcasts, please send your requests to the email which you will find below this video.
And as well, don't hesitate to share our broadcasts in social networks and using 2 hashtags, Creative Society and ALLATRAunites. And please leave your comments and your ideas. So let's share it together. And thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
And of course, everyone is welcome to join our live conversations and live broadcasts 6 degrees of connections, because every opinion is important and we would like to see and hear every human being on this earth in our live broadcasts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.